Hmm. For Julian Jaynes, idolatry wasn't just worship. It was a critical part of the ancient bicameral mind, where physical idols served as focal points to trigger vivid auditory and visual hallucinations of gods or rulers, directing behavior before self-consciousness emerged. Jaynes argued these god voices were actually the right hemisphere communicating to the left, with statues acting as literal homes for these divine presences, explaining ancient texts and practices like burying rulers with goods for their continued guidance. Idols were thus powerful hallucinogens, essential for social cohesion until the breakdown of the bicameralism led to modern introspection and individual volition. So to recap, Julian Jaynes writes, idolatry, excuse me, idolatry is still a socially cohesive force. Its original function. So the human brain, what we know about it is that if you look at culture and society, you can see how we have like something like People magazine, where you've got this magazine devoted to celebrities and television and movies and sports and athletes and coaches and role models. The human brain really needs to connect to role models quite it's a necessity, and you can see that with from infancy to childhood through childhood to adulthood. We're constantly forming attachments and um, role models, and uh, eventually we come to settle on idols such as Buddha and Jesus and uh, Lao Tzu and philosophers, and the brain has to settle on some sort of figurehead or uh, some sort of role model. Um, so that being said, I want to talk about the difference between uh, John Wooden, a UCLA coach, basketball coach, and psychologist Carl Jung, and how the two men are so hard to reconcile. Like, how do you reconcile the philosophy of John Wooden, which is a philosophy of, well, it's very meritocratic. It's a meritocracy. It's based on competitive greatness. It's based on achievement. It's based on doing well in school. It's based on success. It's also based on uh, a sort of disregard for people who don't fit in. So, with John Wooden, if one of his players had a beard, that player was kicked off the team. He wasn't welcome on the team. And John Wooden once said that his life as a professor, as an English professor, and as a basketball coach, he said it was a lot like building a better mousetrap. So John Wooden was very much in the business of entertainment, where you're producing these athletes and producing these businessmen and dentists, and you're producing citizens that are successful and who have achieved. And what does that have to do with Carl Jung, psychologist Carl Jung? The two men hardly have anything to do with each other really at all, because Carl Jung is treating mental illness and disease and poor mental health. So Carl Jung's patients and his clients are people who have not been successful. And so um, the difference between the two men is like night and day. With John Wooden, you get the sense that it's all about winning and success, and achievement and merit. Um, with Carl Jung, you get the feeling that it's more like nighttime. It's you feel this tremendous darkness with Carl Jung because he's dealing with people who are not successful, people who are maladaptive, people who are not normal. And what do you do with those people? People who would be cut from the basketball team at UCLA, who flunked out of school, who didn't keep up in their studies. Carl Jung has a message, or he communicates to people who are unwanted in society and who don't have a place in a position in society, and he has a message for those people, and it's a message to find some sort of inner strength or some sort of spirituality that isn't rooted in uh, the social conformity of, say, John Wooden, where you've got that pyramid of success where at the top is competitive greatness and at the bottom is all the pillars of loyalty, friendship, intent, um, industriousness. He's got all these pillars, and ultimately it's faith and patience that hold it all together. And you're doing everything you can to be a part of the group and to succeed and to achieve and to have merit. Um, Carl Jung gives more hope to the people caught in John Wooden's mousetrap. So the people who have been caught in the trap of life and have not been able to keep up with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Will Chamberlain and all the giants of this world. What do you do with the small people, the people who are the mice of the world, um, the people who don't fit into the system and don't succeed? Um, that's where Carl Jung has a greater humanity and a broader, he embraces humanity, and he has lots to say about, like, with Carl Jung, he studies the indigenous cultures of the world, the primitive tribal cultures, and he studies all the world religions. He synthesizes much on a much broader scale, whereas John Wooden is, uh, it's more just more of a system. It's more of a uh, it's a UCLA culture, and it's it's the difference between night and day. Um, so the mind is very much generating role models and idols, and ultimately we have to forget about who said what, forget about the who's who, and focus more on what's true rather than who said it.